Welcome to Common Mansplaining. What's up? What's up? Welcome back, everybody. I don't know if the video's on yet, but it looks like it is. So we'll keep it growing. Welcome back, everyone. Christian, how have you been? Been good?
Yeah, well, been traveling.
Sweet. Not to LA, I hope.
Not to as a lifelong Angelino, I am not in Los Angeles, but I am following it from afar.
Thank goodness. Okay. Wow. Yeah. LA. Woo. Well, they're special, right? Like they seem to do this every couple years. George
Yeah.
Floyd, 92 riots, like this is their thing, but
Well, George Floyd was Minnesota, but
yeah,
yeah,
most
there's been lots of riots. Obviously, Rodney King. People want to riot for any reason. They're going to.
of
Um,
course.
but um, yeah, it was a bipartisan thing to have law and order. But since I've left California, left Los Angeles County, I grew up in East Los Angeles County. It's been taken over by not just the left, the far left. Historically, San Francisco was very, very liberal, but Los Angeles was more conservative. That was part of the rivalry between the cities. But the far left of the San Francisco political elite have come down to Los Angeles and
Yeah.
have taken over it. And right, I'm trying to no bail, right, being really soft on crime, and no deportations. I mean, this is part of the thing too. It was bipartisan. Reagan, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump. We deported people who were caught illegally, right?
That's it.
And it was the message that the government sent was, come here legally. If we detain you and you've come here legally, we will deport you, right?
Simple enough.
For the last 4 years under Biden, he was an absentee president. He was a figurehead. Whoever the far left that was running the organization decided they didn't have the guts to deport anyone. So the deportation's gone to zero. So obviously you can't govern that way. And this is just a mild correction. I mean, we're talking about like 300 arrests in Los Angeles. So and they are targeting criminals. They're with warrants, right? They're going after people with warrants. Like they're not just like, hey, you look like you might be here illegally. Like they have names, they have pictures, they have, and still any type of correction because they were used to, nobody will ever be deported ever again, right, is related to, has caused this overreaction from the left.
Indeed. So for those of you tuning in, welcome aboard. Good to see you guys. As most of you know, LA is undergoing some what we would call, I guess, civil strife, right? Not quite to the point of what I would call a rebellion or a war or anything crazy like that. Although I have heard some of those words.
It is mob violent demonstrations.
Yeah, I have heard some of those words thrown around, but this is just, to me, this is what I would call a riot. These are riots. They're extended protests. Now, one of the things that I want to talk about today are the stakes, right? So, like, the first thing that I want everybody to understand is what's really at play here, because people think that immigration is like one of those, like a victimless crime, right? Like they come in and nothing happens, right? Like it's no big deal, right? These people are just regular, average, everyday people just trying to live their lives. Well, the problem is the ones that are here that are immigrants, they're not citizens, but they're like, they got a student visa or they're permanent residents. Those are the regular, everyday people. The people who are here and they have no documentation whatsoever, we have no clue what those people are. They could be regular. They could be
we have every right to be suspicious.
Absolutely.
Of why they would feel the need to come here clandestine.
Right. Or stay here, right, long after their thing. And that's what one of the things that never ceases to amaze me is, like, there's people here that, like, they came in legally-ish, like they presented themselves at the port of entry. They got a temporary visa. And then, they've been here for the last 18 years. And I'm like, why didn't you just become it's not that hard. Like, to be fair, and I'll be the first person to admit that to gain citizenship is probably a little bit more difficult than it should be, right? Like, that's something that we should fix. As Americans, it should be a relatively straightforward process. It shouldn't cost $1 million, right? It shouldn't take 7 years. It should be a relatively straightforward process. Maybe pass a test, prove you can speak English, prove that you understand what America stands for, and you can say the Pledge of Allegiance. Boom, you're done. Like we do a background check, make sure you're not coming from some other nation doing some crazy stuff, and then you're good to go. But that having been said, like, if you're going to be here, if you're going to enjoy the benefits, the fruits of America for 10, 12, 15 years, just become a citizen. The only reason not to, the only two reasons not to that I can think of are you're hiding something, or you're trying to like get away with something like not paying taxes. Like, those are the only things that I can think of.
Yeah. There's still, you got to do some paperwork. And some people just, nobody likes paperwork, right?
Yeah.
And,
me neither.
But the government needs to know that you're still here and what your status is, right?
Right.
And the assumption is if you stop your paperwork is that you've gone back to your country, right?
Yeah.
And are we still responsible? Do we need to keep tabs on you? So,
right.
I mean,
and not only that, if you, okay, I had something in mind, but anyway, so like, if you come here, right, and you don't realize how lucky you are to even be coming to a nation that allows you to get citizenship. Right? A lot of nations just don't, right? Like, people don't even ever talk about that. Like, if you go to Japan, they don't just like, yeah, come on and become a Japanese citizen. Come on. That just doesn't happen. You can't go to Afghanistan and become an Afghanistani citizen. You can't go to India and just all of a sudden become an Indian citizen. That's not how it works. We're like one of the very few nations on earth that even allows for someone to just come over here, and no matter what you were before, you can become American. Like, that's an outrageous boon. And like, it's amazing that so many squander that. But before we really dig into it, I want to talk about the stakes that are involved here, because one of the other big things that's going on here that people don't realize is that this is a lot of this has to do with votes, right? When Biden started flooding the market, and maybe it wasn't Biden, probably wasn't. It was probably, the cabal that holds his strings or whatever and makes his mouth move whenever he, come on, man, But anyway,
the man behind the curtain.
The man behind the man, right? So those when Biden's coming in, letting everybody in the universe come into America, what people don't understand is, like, places like California, for example, have now, because of the illegal immigrants that are in there that still get counted by the census, they now have 5 extra seats that represent California that they wouldn't have if we only counted citizens. Like, I think we're supposed to. Now, that's a debate, and I'm happy to have it with somebody. But, like, to me, if you're counting illegal citizens to like inflate your numbers so that you have more suffrage, so you have more better voting power, that to me is cheating, right? And I'll be the first to admit that both sides play power games all day long, right? The Republicans do it too, but this is like quite blatantly cheating. And now I just saw a article in the paper the other day. They did a tally of all the illegal immigrants counted on censuses. If right now the Republicans have about a 7-seat majority, but it would actually be 27 seats if we counted only citizens. So, like, just so that you guys understand the amount of power this is providing, the amount of difference it makes. Like, this is big. It's not just like, oh, a couple of people here and there, 1 seat might shift. No, this is 27 seats swing in the House of Representatives.
This is even if none of those people vote, just by census data. Yeah.
Right. And they're not even voting. They're just there in the place counted as census data. So
this is definitely putting your finger on the scales, warping reality for your political advantage.
Absolutely. And so, we look at these situations, and people might think that it's no big deal to, like, do simple things like uphold the law.
Yeah.
do simple things like deport an illegal immigrant when you find them. And like I have to say, the number of total deportations that we've processed so far has not been that high. It's obvious that ICE is specifically targeting hotspots, like
Dangerous criminals. Yeah.
people that like they're looking for people that are like gang members. Now, in all fairness, they definitely find people that aren't in gangs also, right? Like if they go sweep up 5 gang members and then there's like 6 other guys that are just hanging out with the gang members who are also illegal.
Well,
yeah,
yeah.
they're going to get deported too. That's just how it is.
Right. So John Stewart tried to mock ICE for confronting a Home Depot parking lot. Right.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, we're now. You say we're going after, but now you're going after people, day laborers who, right?" And what they don't know, if obviously the Daily Show is not a real journalist, but everybody jumped on board and reported that. What they didn't know is, like, if their warrants lead them that one of their people is hiding out at a Home Depot posing as a day laborer, that's where they go pick him up. If one of the people, and so they're like, oh, they're sweeping these places of just workers. Look, no, they're looking for the criminals. You're just spinning it. So the elites, this is the bigger issue that I see. Yes, the elites, they don't have to deal with the negative consequences of too much illegal immigration, right? Their hospital, they're not worried about the emergency rooms being crowded or whatever. Their neighborhoods are gated. So the elites, just more people means if they can exploit it for their political power, that's where they're all for it.
Right.
But here's the bigger thing. So Gavin Newsom gave a speech today. I don't know if you watched it.
Yeah, part of it.
Yeah, the audio was bad. But hey, little aside, several mainstream media has actually covered that speech live, even with the terrible audio. When they won't cover Trump, even when speaking to Fort Bragg, talking about California, they wouldn't cover that live. Only if it's Butler, Pennsylvania. But anyway, but in Gavin Newsom's talk, at the end, he said this was a threat to democracy. This was about democracy itself, right?
Of course.
And I want to respond to this. So that's how the elites are trying to frame this. And this is what they think. For the common man, we need to know that we are not we are not mob rule. We are a nation of laws, not mobs.
That's it.
Right? So, yes, in their other countries, in Mexico, Central America, you want to get things done? A riot is the way to go. Right? Right. So that's this is what you do. In a republic, we had an election.
That's it.
We have representatives. We have a president. They govern according to laws, and enforcing those laws, right? Just because a mob reacts, that's the threat to democracy. Saying, "Hey, the angry mob of a very, very small minority now gets to dictate laws."
Right.
Absolutely not.
Right.
And if there's one way that these people need to show that they do not understand America, waving their flags of Mexico or Central American countries, is by saying that a mob will overrule the rule of law. And our elites understand that as well, but they're happy to exploit these low information or people that don't understand, right? Just for optics or to try, if they feel like that they can wield that for their political advantage.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. You couldn't have said it better myself. And that's, right. That's one of the key differences between, just a pure democracy and a constitutional republic, which is essentially what we are. And yes, we have a representative, we have a representation layer, and then we also have a voting layer, which is direct. So it's a blend. So it might confuse some people, but we're not just.
Yeah, ICE isn't stopping anyone from voting. Then you can say it's a threat to the democratic processes. Right? There's no election coming up for a long time.
Right.
So chill on the threat to democracy.
So one of the things that I want to talk about today is the rough timeline. I'm not going to go over everything because it's a long timeline and it would take forever to probably bore people to death. But I do want to make a couple of key points that because I've talked to a lot of different people about this, and there's a lot of confusion about the timeline. And when I went online and started reading in the news, what the problems were, like why people are reading the, hearing these things and like misunderstanding the timeline. Part of the problem is that like a lot of the news stations are just absolutely lying about what's going on. Like not even like usually news lies by omission or by like, twisting the facts in a kind of presenting them in a way that it makes it seem like, but no, I'm reading stuff that it's like, oh, these are absolutely just peaceful protests, and then big bad ICE comes along and I'm like, what? This isn't even remotely accurate. So one of the big things I want to talk about is that this thing was going on for 2 full days before National Guard arrives on the third day, right?
Yeah.
That's a
Friday.
huge deal, right? Because the Gavin Newsom will have you believe that this is all, miraculously peaceful 100%. And he'll have you think that, like, the National Guard was called for no reason whatsoever, right? But it's really, really, really important to understand that before the National Guard even got called, police officers were assaulted, buildings were assaulted, like vandalized, buildings were looted. There were various, casualties, like from like human casualties. Even I don't know exactly when. There's a body that was just found. We don't even know when that person died yet, right? Like they're just found near one of the buildings that was looted. Like this was serious, and not only that, it had gotten to the point where each police, in various different parts of this protest, like the protesters would show up at different places, like different areas of town where different jurisdictions would manage it. And like LAPD would come out and say, all right, look, you guys are in the middle of the road. This is an unlawful, assembly. You got to disperse or, move to a different place that is lawful, right? And most of the time they would just ignore them, right? And then the next time it was like the sheriff's department was like, look, you guys are in, you're blocking traffic. You can't assemble here. We're happy to, have you peacefully protest, but it can't be in the middle of a highway, So you got to move. And so like, instead of doing what the police officers ordered them to do, they instead expanded the protest and like grew larger. Like it just turned into a larger and larger and larger mass of people. Now, at this point, Trump's got a dilemma to deal with, right? Like, do I call in the National Guard or do I not? Does Gavin Newsom, do his wishes override the need for safety, the need for the rule of law?
All right. Well, before we get to that decision, part of the thing is for people watching who've never been to Los Angeles, as I grew up in Los Angeles, it is such a spread out area. Right?
Yes.
The square miles of Los Angeles are greater. It's like the state of New Jersey. Like it's right. You cannot grasp it if you've just lived in East Coast cities. It is sprawl. So what that sets up is for optics, they can cherry pick a place where they want to hold a press conference that can be super calm and be like, hey, there's no big deal out here because of,
right.
Even when there's, or they can cherry pick a place where that shows that there's complete chaos. And so for a while they were cherry picking and using optics that go say no, LAPD is fine, they've got it all under control. We don't need Trump because they don't want Trump to get political points for coming to save their butts, which is what they need to do. Finally, this is when you talk about that the mainstream media is spinning, right? They're not interviewing the protesters because they're terrible advocates for their cause.
Of course not.
They're spinning all the narratives, but every once in a while some cracks get through. One of them, they asked the LAPD, do you think the National Guard will here? And thinking the LAPD person, as a leftist, a Democrat, appointed by Karen Bass, would toe the party line, and he said, no, we are overwhelmed. Right? Finally, right, he's like, there's no limit to what these people are trying to do. Right? I'm reading out of LA Times. He's like, there's no limit to what these protesters are doing to our people, our law enforcement. We are overwhelmed. Right?
Right.
So it's like they weren't expecting that to get that response. They were expecting something to fit their narrative. And finally, Karen Bass with that has, issued curfews and tried to take this as more serious. But it clearly shows that Trump was right. That this was not, he wasn't jumping the gun. It wasn't expedient. but they just don't want him to get credit for being right and making a correct decision, presidential decision.
Of course not. Of course not. That's always going to be like an optics thing, right? It's always going to be a battle, right? We don't want Trump to have any victories. Now, that being said, I got a spicy take for you. You ready?
Sure. Yeah, I'm ready.
I think Trump should have just let them burn LA to the ground. And I'm not saying that because I want people to get hurt, and I'm not saying that because I want LA damaged. I think that what he should have done was literally wait until Gavin Newsom was begging for help. Because I think this whole thing is just going to be. You got to understand, part of this is his MO, right? Because his game is Trump's always been the kind of person who wants to solve the problem very swiftly, right? Wants to just be the man in control. He likes to be the top dog. He likes to be in control. Likes to solve the problem, and he likes to do so using whatever powers are available to him. Obviously, this power is available to him, right? So, real quick aside to anybody out there who thinks that this wasn't legal, 100% was. 100%. Now, whether or not he should do it is a different game, but 100% was allowed to do it, right? Definitely his call. Title 10 is 100% part of the rules on the book, end of story. Now, but here's my thing, right? If you've already got an image of authoritarianism, you can play around that. I don't understand why Trump can't. This is my one of my beefs with him is like, I don't understand why he can't play the game just a little bit. Just like, all right, look, you guys don't want my help. And make a show of it, like, look, I offered my help. Gavin turned it down. And then I think it'd be even better for him too, like politically. And then it's like show a video of them vandalizing something. Show a video of them throwing ice water at a police officer. Show a video of it, like video. And then he's like, "Hey, look, I offered my help," And then that's what I think. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
So, let's stay away from the nearer comparisons. It's not to that level, but I will say this is a spicy take. But Los Angeles is not Ferguson, Missouri.
Fair enough.
So it is a media capital, a cultural touchstone, one of our great cities in the country. It is something that broadcasts American culture and hegemony to the world.
Sure.
There are millions and millions of his supporters and donors. It's still a huge place for Republican fundraising. Now, yes, the political power is dominated and overshadowed by Democrats, and they're spending the elites there, the Democrat elites, but there are powerful interests on the Republican side, powerful donors, money things, and it's too important and too visible a place. Now, right, if this happened where there wasn't a lot of elites, Ferguson, or someplace like Chicago, right, a leftist city, I can see him offering. Well, even Chicago is too big. You come in for Chicago. Big, I can't think of it. Maybe Detroit or something like that. But
nobody cares about Detroit.
But and even Minnesota, he took a long time to interview in Minnesota. I mean, but I think as cold as it is, Los Angeles is a little bit different. It's also right. You haven't spent a lot of time there. It's so diverse as far as the politics and there's millions upon millions of just common people that just want to live in peace.
Common man.
There are a lot of bizarre people there, right? West Hollywood, ride the bus, and caricatures that you think of, and people who are far left and out there. Yes, but there are a lot of good, just sort of common salt of the earth people there as well. And they deserve a president that runs to, right, says we're a nation of laws. And so, obviously, I support the National Guard, and I think it's the right thing to do, whether or not the elites currently in power agree with it or not. Saving the city is something that history will look back upon more favorably, rather than like, let's burn it down and I can rebuild it better, like Nero.
I hope that's the case. I mean, the problem is, and this, to answer Tanya's question here, Tanya asked, if he did nothing and just waited, what would people say? And of course, the answer is the same thing. Trump is going to catch hate no matter what he does.
That doesn't bother him.
There is no right answer for Trump ever. Like, there will never be a thing where Trump does something and the Democrats are like, that's actually not too bad. It's just never going to happen ever. Like, no matter, and the problem is it's partisanship. And I mean, there's a lot of different reasons. There's going to be a million different reasons. I see you asking why, but there's a million different reasons. But the biggest one is we've gotten so polarized in the nation that there can't be any like giving the other team points. Just it can't happen. And it's a shame. Like it's like that on both sides. Both sides do this all the time, but there's just nobody that's willing to just like, except for that one officer, who probably screwed up. He's probably going to get it dressed down. Like he's like,
hey, you want me to give you his name? Let me get you his name too. It was
yeah, I am kind of interested.
What was his name? Was McDonald. Oh, L.A. Police Chief Jim McDonald.
Oh yeah, the police chief. Yeah.
Right.
And to be fair, he's and he's still a liberal, right? He's still pretty like leftist.
Because look, he's trying to couch things, for as much as he can, but he's like, as I mentioned in my statement, I can't thank our folks enough and our partner agency police officials for going out there and taking care of the community. When pressed by the media if the National Guard was really needed, McConnell didn't hesitate and said of the riots, this thing has gotten out of control. Right?
There you go. That's the police chief of LAPD saying we needed help. And
it's out of control.
And right. And to flip the switch on that too, the converse to this would be the case as well. Like if the LAPD had it under control, then the fact that the National Guard was there wouldn't have changed anything. The LAPD would just like boom, boom, boom. And that would have been the best way. If Gavin Newsom really wanted to show Trump up, the best way that he could have done that was like wrap up the protests in like a day. Then Trump would have been like, oh, wow, we mobilized for no reason. That would have been the big revenge. If Gavin Newsom really wanted to fight that game, like he could have been like, look, we need to just clamp down on this curfew right away. Bing, bang, boo. They didn't put a curfew out until the 5th day. It's like they were so sluggish on this. And here's the thing. Again, the reason for it is political power. Every single person that they arrested was going to be a political ally for them. Every single person that they arrested was going to have families that were going to be pissed off, was going to have friends that were going to be pissed off. Every single person that they arrested wasn't going to be able to vote for them next year. Like it's like on and on and on. They would literally have been going after their own political allies, and in doing so, decrease their own political power, their own political leverage. And so
when it's expedient, when it's law and order, we're a nation of laws. You do what the law says it is, not what the mob right now says it is. Right? The election will happen. I mean, I think so in 30 minutes from now, the curfew will come into effect.
Right.
And the reporting. So there was another CNN reporter who like an on the spot reporter, a correspondent out in the field, who was like reporting on the lines. He's like, it smells like weed here. It doesn't look like anybody wants to disperse. And the type of people that are out here look like they're here because they want to cause problems. They want some anarchy. They want to relieve the sublime thing. So rubber bullets are not deterring them. Tear gas is not deterring them, and they're ready to make a spectacle. And this is dangerous leftist violence that's been condoned for so long. There's not a leader they respect that can stand up and tell them to go home.
Right. That's one of the key problems here. Like we did a session, like was it now? I don't know if I can't remember if it was the last one, the one before last. Yeah, that was like on all the leftist, violence that's been going on with the, attacking of Teslas and the targeting of, anti-Semitic targets and stuff like that. And it's just like it just seems like nobody's really trying to clamp down on it. When it's the right, like January 6th is like, oh, throw the key away, lock them up forever. They never deserve to get out of jail. Like they served 5 years in prison for like walking through the halls, and they're like, and then get pardoned, and everybody's like, what? You're letting this guy out who was walking through the halls? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So there's this huge double standard.
The whataboutism right now is what they're using to defend their rights. But this is again back to trying to arrest criminal aliens, and abolish ICE. what kind of country, right? That you can bring stuff into a country and not have somebody check a manifest,
Right.
or get the names of who is entered here.
Yeah, let me be clear. If you don't have border protection, you don't have a country.
Nope.
That's it. There is no such thing as a nation without a line like that. And I know it seems like silly to have those lines, and maybe one day we won't, right? I'm looking forward to the day where we're like Star Trek and we're all just sailing through the stars and there's just one big happy global federation or whatever. Perfect. But until then, we've got the little lines, and those little lines have meaning, and we have to uphold that for the time being. Now, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about regarding the timeline is that almost every single interaction that, like, where the police are getting assaulted and shooting rubber bullets back and stuff like that, almost every single one of those was LAPD or the Highway Patrol or the Sheriff's Department in LA, right? Like, it's not like everybody wants to make ICE out to be the bad guy. The ICE has had almost no interaction with people. The only thing that ICE does is they go raid a place, they find the guy that they're looking for, or they don't, or they get some other people. And then the only other people that ICE interact with are the people that are like literally standing in front of their vehicles trying to keep them from driving off with the people that they just arrested. Then, okay, yeah, then ICE gets out of the vehicle, drags them and puts them in the same van and go, or sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just try to like drive around. I've seen so many times where they like just try to ignore the people 100% or drive around them, or like I saw this video the other day where it was a dude, like ICE was driving and this dude was like trying to push on the car, running backwards for like half a mile. And I'm like, that guy he's going to kill himself. And sure enough, eventually he falls over and whacks his head on the concrete. I'm like, I mean, I hate seeing it happen. I'm like, but meanwhile, I'm like, you dumbass, what are you doing? Like, what kind of an idiot stands in front of a car and I can't get behind that mindset. I just can't. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So it's very important to understand that the interactions that are happening, like even the bad ones, and there's a couple of bad ones that I'd like to bring up a little bit later, where the police are doing stupid stuff, where they're shooting people they don't have to, like they shot this woman at point blank range in the stomach and stuff like that. But even those are like, that's LAPD. That's not the National Guard. That's not the feds.
Well,
That's not DHS.
They're reacting poorly because there's videos that people throw not only Molotov cocktails, which are bad enough, but actual bullets, like gunshots. People bring
actual fireworks, like class 2 fireworks that like they're literally explosives, right? Like
M80s. You can get quarter and full sticks of dynamite from Tijuana and bring them into the country if you don't go through the border. So. If you want to riot, there's so many millions of people in LA, you can get it. Now, one of the interesting things I want to talk about race and ethnicity here in a second after you're done.
Okay.
But a couple of neighborhoods where there wasn't rioting was Compton. You know very much about Compton? You've heard of Compton?
Yeah, a little. Yeah.
Right. So Compton was like the epicenter of riots for the Rodney King riot.
Right.
And Compton in '92 at the Rodney King riots was a majority black city. It is now over 80% Hispanic.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Blacks, their homes became so bad they sell them and they move to the desert, right? Or they move to Atlanta or whatever, right?
Wow.
It's overwhelmingly Hispanic, but it's still run by gangs. There's still a lot of gangs there, but the gangs got out and said, we want no rioting in our town. And if anybody riots, we will execute them. And sure enough, and then they had some like guy, he looked to be in his late 50s or something, who was, I guess, the head of the Crips, was out walking in this street where these protesters were, and he's like, go home, everybody. And then people went home, no riots. Right? So right, but in America, we don't want rules by gangsters, and we appreciate that they're keeping the peace.
Right.
But people shouldn't have to put up with that. And that's part of the thing is it can turn, because law enforcement can easily be overwhelmed because there's so many people. The areas of control are so vast. It's so much bigger than you New York or people that are used to small or tightly small cities, regional cities out here, that keeping control of it is really, it's more perception than anything. It's why the LAPD does so much stuff, is so that they can project an image of, because they can't be everywhere. It's just so big. You know, they have to feel like they have to mentally sort of get in people's heads. And that type of impression is why they have such a negative image. But it's really sort of, you know, it's something that you can't appreciate until you're there. Now, do you want to talk more about your timelines? Or can we talk about that?
I had a couple more points real quick. So one point that I wanted to make too is that, you know, early on essentially the first day that this thing went down and ICE is making their raid, Karen Bass, the genius that she is, goes on, you know, on an interview in public and says, you know, that she condemns the raids and like, we won't stand for this. And I'm like, here you are, the mayor of a town, and you're telling people to disrespect the law. Like that, I can't think of anything further away from your job as mayor than to tell people not to respect the law enforcement that's in place. Like, literally can't think of a worse thing she could do, you know, short of like going out and being in the mob herself. That's outrageous, right? And so understand that, like, I really wish that we could find some common ground, like the two sides in this kind of thing. But if you've got somebody where one side is trying to just do their job and uphold the law, and the other side is like, no, we don't want that.
Well, Newsom has come dangerously close to equating any type of the protest or resistance to this as a moral, justified reaction to Donald Trump. Right. And that it's really you're standing up to Donald Trump. So he's made this about Trump, right? And that's very dangerous. That's throwing fuel on a fire. And there's going to be, even with National Guard, there's going to be more damage to Los Angeles and their image than is really acceptable, right? I know the Olympics are coming, things like this, but you know, it's there are going to be consequences, and he's so short-sighted in his bubble as an elite. All he can think of is, how can I make this about Trump and make this a negative thing about Trump? If I can get Trump's approval rating down a few points, Trump doesn't care about any of that. Of course. This is the right thing to do. He's enforcing the law.
So, what did you want to talk about then? What was your next?
I want to talk about well, narratives and framing. So obviously, so the elites want to frame this, and what they've done forever is they want to frame this as a race riot, as racism, right? That's how the identity politics is how California was turned to a one-party state, right? So they want to make this all about that. So a few people, right, on all social media, many people have said, what is it with protesters standing on top of burned cars in Los Angeles waving Mexican flags, right?
Yeah, right.
And so the New York Times did this article on this. So they obviously know, if you talk to those people, they're not going to be articulate that, you know. So they've gone to some elites and got some ideas on that, and they're like, well, it's a sort of solidarity thing about our heritage. You know, even people who were born in America is like, I was going to these protests and I could have bought American flags, but I decided to buy a Guatemala flag and a Mexican flag because that's my parents' heritage.
Okay.
And that it's a sign of like pride. These are like the strongest type of arguments for it. But what that frames it as, and that's what the left wants to frame it as, that anything Trump's doing is not just enforcing the laws of our country. He's targeting Mexicans.
Oh, yes.
He's not. This is not about you being Mexican. This is not about you being Hispanic, right? This is just about anybody, Chinese nationals, Middle Eastern nationals, anybody coming into this country, evading ICE, right, illegally, or securities, and especially if they have a criminal record and they have not been deported, those people need to be contained. And they want to start a race riot. The elites are trying to spin this story and narrative that it's really just anti-Hispanic,
Of
and we
course.
need identity politics because that they were able to tell that story, and get California where it is now. What's
Yeah,
your reaction?
of course, that's the game, right? It's always Trump's a racist. Like that's the orange man bad. That's the easiest. That's the low hanging fruit. So J.C. Smith says, I hope you all have been talking about how the president doesn't have authority to move the National Guard into a state without approval from the governor, let alone the Marines. So just so that you understand, J.C., 100% incorrect. Title 10 100% offers the president of the United States the ability to protect a federal asset under any condition he desires at any time. Now, whether or not he should do it is another statement. Me and Christian have a slight disagreement about that. I think Trump should have just waited for Gavin Newsom. I think Trump should have waited for Gavin Newsom to be begging for help while the whole city gets overrun. But that having been said, no, Trump absolutely. Not only that, Lyndon Johnson called the National Guard against the wishes of the governor. Kennedy called the Guard against the wishes of the governor. Eisenhower did it. On and on and on and on. You're 100% incorrect. The National Guard gets called against the wishes of the governor all the time, actually, believe it or not.
And they'll get a hearing on this. Trump will win one. It'll be such a slam dunk because he's on very solid footing here.
100%.
Right?
Yeah,
any protestations are just appeal to our emotional. They're not based on any type of sound legal doctrine.
Now, you're right that Gavin Newsom can also activate the National Guard and should have, right? Like there's no reason for him to wait, right? He could have gotten militias together to start tamping this down, but he did. That's not the game, right? Because again, like we just talked about it right before you were in, but then they'd be going after political, allies. They'd be having every single person they arrested would be a friend to them politically. So
and they'd be acknowledging that leftist violence is a problem.
Yes. So yeah. Of course, the game is paint Trump in a negative light. Now, one of the things I want to talk about today is how to protest peacefully, how to do it the right way, because I don't want anyone to ever come away from this thinking that I'm not okay with protests. Mm-hmm. I adore protests. I think that protests are one of the most, one of the most patriotic things you can do. I think that they're almost always healthy if done correctly. But dear God in heaven, stay peaceful when you do it. Don't and this is one of the big things to look out for. If you are a protester, make sure that you're looking out for the people who are trying to cause problems and steer clear of them, because no matter how it goes, like you could have a group of people that are together and they're all like intending to stay peaceful. They all plan on it, but then somebody else sees that that's happening and they're like an anarchist or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, this is perfect cover. I can just dive into the crowd and start throwing my bottles of ice water at the police's head from there, because how would they single him out? He's going to be wearing a mask. It's going to be. So you got to watch out for opportunists, because opportunists are always going to try to take advantage of that situation. You can't vandalize stuff. You can't assault police officers. And I said this every single time, no matter which side was doing it. When January 6th was going on, I'm like, yeah, it's a bunch of morons, right? Now that it's going on here on the left, bunch of morons. You guys need to learn how to protest peacefully in a public space where you're allowed to be, not in the middle of the damn road. Like some of this stuff is just so commonsensical.
J.C. Smith, I mean, they're assaulting federal buildings, right? They're assaulting federal vehicles, federal buildings. And even though Karen Bass said, yeah, there wasn't a need for the National Guard, they were lying. Nobody was buying that. That is a bull crap. BS. Yeah. BS, what she was saying. And that what I just quoted you, LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell. You can look this up. He's quoted in saying that the thing had gotten out of control. He needs help. The police chief, Los Angeles police chief Jim McDonnell. Is thanking them and says there's no limit to what they're doing. They're overwhelmed, and there's no limit to what is being done to their officers. Right. So any spin that you're saying that they don't need this, you are watching mainstream media people who are ignoring anything that doesn't fit their narrative.
Now, yeah, like I said, that being said, I think Trump should have just let it be. I think he should have just let LA burn until it was time. I think it would have been better optics for him. But, it is what it is. And Trump is not good. We knew Trump wasn't going to do that. Now, here's the other side of this coin, right, that I kind of want to just touch on briefly. Trump said from before he got elected, like, look, I'm going to deport illegal immigrants. I'm going to uphold the law. And there are probably going to be riots. And if there are, I'm going to use the military to quell them. Right? Like this shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Now, whether or not it's the right move or not, like it definitely shouldn't be a shock. It should not surprise a single person. They should all be like, oh yeah, he said he was going to do that. Now he did. And especially Trump, out of all people, like maybe other presidents will say things that they don't kind of mean. Trump's just like says it, does it, says it, does it, says it, does it. Unless, he's just BSing about how great he is. Then it's free for all on the truth. But another thing that I wanted to ask about is protesting even the best way to get your voice heard anymore? Like when I say that, I'm not taking anything away from protesting because again, like I said, it's a great thing. But like, I probably reach more voices on my little rinky-dink channel, and we're not popular yet. Like we're not big, right? I reach far more people here online. I'm sure, like imagine, we all know about the protests, right? But imagine if each and every single one of those people posted on Facebook. That's a huge network of people. Like that's an immense visibility, right? And maybe they're doing that also. Like I don't know, some of them, might be big about online, but I don't know. I don't even know with the new way that the world is formed and social media, it may actually be more visible online than to like go out and stand in a street corner.
Well, all right. So, all right, a couple things about these protests. So,
Yeah.
so not all protests, and what you're saying about the ineffective is absolutely true. And so this is why George Soros, he's not. This isn't his first rodeo. These protests are being funded. They're being organized. Though the police chief are saying that even in different areas all across Los Angeles, they're using the same tactics. Somebody's training. There are videos of them dropping off these masks. Against tear gas and rubber bullet masks, they talked about that being funded. Bricks being dropped in certain places, pallets of bricks, so people can get bricks and throw them or build their own barricades, right?
Yeah.
And the big thing, if you want your protest to mean anything, it's got to be covered by the media and get online and get airplay on TV and get spun.
Right.
And so there are protests that will last an hour, right? Because they just know as soon as the media gets their covers up and they're fired up and they act like, oh, this protest is all day. As soon as the media leaves, they pack up and leave. Because there's no point in being there other than to be window dressing for that. So obviously Los Angeles being a media center, you're going to get coverage of this because anything that threatens, and it's close by. They don't have to travel and get hotels in Ferguson, Missouri. It's down the street. They're going to cover the story. Soros knows that. Now he just needs to coordinate so that the groups, do it in a certain way. So they're not just trying to peacefully get a permit and do this. They're organizing it for maximum effect and to overcome the weaknesses that you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So another thing that I saw floating around, and I want your impressions on this. Some media outlets are starting to say stuff like we've never been closer to civil war. Right now, I tend to think this is just clickbait myself. I tend to think that it's just like when are they going to say it? Now is the best time. It's the closest that they they can play that game. I know that we had a little crisis back when Texas was summoning the National Guard to defend against the FBI from taking down the border fence, and stuff like that. But as serious as that seemed, I knew that it wasn't going to escalate beyond that. I knew it was just going to be like a quick thing. But this, I don't know if protests, this is definitely more akin to what a true beginning of a revolution looks like. Not that I think that this is what that is, right? But like this is much more similar to what our last one looked like, what the Civil War looked like. This like it starts with heavy civil strife, and then the civil strife spreads to other cities, which this has begun to. And I'm knock on wood. I pray that that's not what's going on, because I don't think I think that would be a lose-lose for every single person on the block, right? I think the people who want this cause, who think that they're trying to stop the deportation of illegal aliens, nothing would make Trump happier than to like scoop up all of his political rivals at once in the process of upholding the law. And that would make, like, if you're trying to make Trump look bad, like nothing makes him look better than for him to be the one on the right side of the law and to be able to like sweep everybody up. Like that's just terrible. So, and meanwhile, like I don't want our union challenged. I don't want a civil war. I'm not going to fight. I got kids, I can't. I'm not, no way, right? And they would probably call me because I'm still on the recall list. Like I don't want to get involved. Like that's the last thing I want to have happen. So like everybody just needs to chill the F out, and
look, common sense. I agree with you 100%. The thing is, the Democrats have shown when Trump is involved, they will take an issue with a 20% approval rating versus an 80% for the other side, and knee-jerk reaction, just go for it. Now,
yep.
Commonly the right has been associated with violence, has been tainted with that's their narrative. Certainly, at least they're tainted as being more competent when it comes to violence. Like you want to bring it, you want to bring your jihad and your riots to rural America or Texas. There's certain types of things like a global day of jihad didn't exactly get off the ground in Texas. Just what we say, right?
Everything's bigger but that in Texas.
Right. So right, that's a narrative, and people are usually on that if you want competency in your violence, competent gun owners, it's on the right. But if you want emotional, right, this is neocortex, this is what we're talking about. These appeals, Gavin Newsom is crying in his addresses, he's talking about this.
Of course.
He wants to see it. He sees it all as emotional, and he wants people to have an emotional response. And emotion detaches your reason. You don't think through these things. You're just acting emotionally. You're doing stupid things, and then what happens? You come down off that high. You're handcuffed in the back of a federal detention vehicle, facing 10 years in prison. Right? These are people who torched Tesla vehicles because there was a brief emotional moment, and they're going to suffer consequences for the rest of their life, right? And these are the same things we can avoid if they could just calm down and say, this is a non-emotional moment. Please calm down. I know this is not the policy that we would favor, and we hope that you will vote for us in the future, but this is a legal action the government is taking, and it is not standing in the way of it is not going to stop them taking that action.
Right.
And violence is not the answer to change it, because America is not run by mobs. Mexico, all the places you're waving flags, maybe mobs rule there, but not America.
Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah. So that's one thing I did want to get to before we end today. So I do want to talk about some of the negative actions that have been taken by the LAPD in this event. So, right. Because they definitely, I've seen at least a couple of videos where they shoot somebody that they just don't have to, right? Like I've seen such certain situations where like the standard operating procedure, from what I understand, is if you've got a crowd that you need to disperse, you fire the little rubber pellets into the ground, it bounces up into somebody's shin, it hurts, it leaves a mark, and then everybody leaves, right? But I also see like police officers like taking aim at somebody from like 6 feet and popping them in the gut. And I'm like, what? And like to be clear, this woman was not rushing at them or anything like that. She wasn't chasing them with a knife. It wasn't like she had a weapon in her hands. The story goes that she was just walking home. I don't know if I believe that because later in the video, it's kind of weird because later in the video, they shows that her house is actually in the other direction. But even so, like even if she went up there to taunt them, they should be about like no LA police officer should be so caught up in their ego that they have to like level a shot into somebody's gut ever. Like that's ridiculous.
So what would you say there's some bad people on both sides?
Oh,
Sorry. So I couldn't resist that. Yeah, I can't carry water and defend everything. What we don't see in videos, which can be cherry picked, is all the stuff that led up to building the tension right on that police officer until they snap. I mean, generally, police officers have a pretty long fuse, especially when it comes to discharging the firearm. Usually, I don't know, rubber bullets might be different. Usually, there's tons of paperwork that are involved for every time you discharge your firearm, and justifying it, and it can be reviewed, and certainly, right, with these body cams, that police officer's actions are going to be held accountable. We know that. There are going to be reviews. He does have a union that'll back him up, but mistakes can be made in riots. These are emotional times, and even when the government's trying to say calm things down and not there's still people under those uniforms, right? We don't know how many times they've gotten hit by things and been calm, and then on the 100th one, they lose their clue and they see the video you're shooting out. Now, I don't want to excuse that. That doesn't make it right. We trust the government to use their power of violence responsibly, and we hope that the National Guard and the Marines will use their violent authority responsibly as well, and people will realize these are legitimate government people who can legitimately wield violence against my violent actions, and will respond by staying home and posting on Facebook.
Right. Which may just be the better way to do it anyway. And again, once again, I want to stress this has been LAPD making these errors. This isn't ICE screwing this up. This isn't Department of Homeland Security. This isn't FBI. This isn't anybody. This isn't the National Guard. This isn't the Marines. This is LAPD messing this up, which to me just means one more reason why we needed extra support, because apparently for all LA's expertise, they can't apparently, manage this without getting emotional and losing their cool or something. Like maybe they really did. Because honestly, I've watched a lot more videos where they're sitting there in front of the federal like detention center, and there's a row of ICE officers, and they're like lobbing things at the ICE officer's face, and they're just standing there, right? Like they literally do nothing. Probably because they were ordered to, right? Like probably somebody's like, look, the last thing we need is bad press. Stand there and do nothing, and fair enough, they were able to do it, but like each and every time. So yeah, one thing I do want to just touch on briefly, because this is something that I talk about elsewhere in my channel too. One thing that JC is doing is what I call the false equivalency fallacy, and that is because each and every individual situation in life is unique. We try to draw references that one doesn't apply to the other, and that there can't be a comparison drawn. So I disagree with that general concept. I think when there are two relatively similar situations, even if they're not identical, you can definitely draw the reference. And the reference here is a precedent that the president is, in fact, imbued with the power to activate the military to defend a national asset, no matter what. And like that's just all there is to it. And you're right, there's different.
Trump is defending children and families from violence.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's defending federal people. These are people from violence. There's violence was happening. He's responding to it.
And again, I want to be clear, like the way that Trump has, again, he's used Title 10. What that means is he's bringing National Guard in to defend the detention center, right? He's bringing National Guard in to defend ICE officers specifically, which is why when these interactions take place and the LAPD is firing these ridiculous shots that are hurting people, that's LAPD that's doing it. It's not the National Guard that's getting involved in riot control, because that's not their job right now. Their job is to defend the national asset, right? So
So
it
Andy,
is.
you might be a little too young to remember the '92 Rodney King riots.
Yes, I mean, I knew that they happened, and I
Yeah,
remember everybody going nuts
yeah,
about it, but
yeah.
I didn't watch the news
I
back
was in
then.
high school. So I have a very good friend of mine, still close now, who was in the Long Beach Fire Department, was a paramedic for the Long Beach Fire Department. So he was going all over the place putting out fires, right? That were doing that. And because of that, then they called it. So people then started targeting the firefighters and the paramedics who were going to like help people who were hurt and put out
Right,
fires. So they got at that time they called federal agencies. They called the ATF to help just provide security for the fire department. They were supposed to do no law enforcement and anything, just protect firefighters when they go about from riots and things like that. So they went around, and you know, that situation got out of hand, and so much got burned down because they were directed not to sort of intervene at that time by the Clinton because of this. Though he would tell some stories of some things that they would do, just when they reached their boiling point, when they just seen so much, they would, because they're human too, and they would snap and it's not a good situation. I'm glad there have been no reports of lives lost at this point, but it's going to happen where people are keyed up. Violence is being used against people who have been trained and authorized to use violence for the government. You are in a dangerous situation. Please
yep,
de-escalate. And right now, I please honor. We're saying anybody that can hear this in California, please honor those curfews. Get
please.
off the streets. Go home and post on Facebook. Watch Common Mansplaining. Start posting and disagree with us in our
Yeah,
comment section. But do not use violence tonight.
yeah,
And
please,
the world
please
will
don't.
be better for it.
Yeah, please don't, like it. Yeah, right. The last thing you guys want in LA is for you to be dragged away from your family because you did something stupid or wrote something dumb on a wall, or spit on a police officer. Like, that's the last thing you need in your life, I promise you, right? It'd be much better for you just go to work the next day and like keep on trucking, and you can be mad. I don't There's nothing against being mad. If you want to be angry about deportation, be angry, but be angry in a peaceful manner. Be angry in a way that does not affect anybody else's rights negatively. One real quick thing that I want to tell everybody before I go today, and that is I'm going to be on beach vacation next week. So I'm gone actually a week and a half technically for you guys because I'll miss 3 live episodes. I don't know if Christian is gonna air or not. It's gonna be up to him. But just wanted to let you know that I will miss you guys, and we'll catch you guys in a week and a half. Christian, any closing thoughts?
Just Los Angeles it's a Garden of Eden when it's run well, but you can destroy paradise with bad government. And the left, communism always said, once something's built up and great, we can just let it go into gentle decline.
Right.
This is just showing they want to turn create a place with so much potential and even beyond potential realized wealth generation, and that has so many great things, and ruin it with lazy communist socialist leadership.
Yep.
Don't fall for it. Don't fall for the lies of the left, the narratives of the left. California can be great again. Let's make
Yep.
California great again.
Let's make California great.
Maca.
Maca. All right, I love it. All right, guys, that was it. Have a great day. Thanks for watching Common Mansplaining.